The summer heat settled heavily across the plains surrounding Belgrade, casting shimmering waves over the dusty fields as the fortress city waited for a storm that everyone knew was coming. The Danube flowed silently beneath its towering walls, reflecting the deep anxiety that stretched across every corner of the city. Belgrade had faced armies before, but nothing like the one that was now marching across the Balkans with unstoppable momentum. For the thousands who lived inside the city, every distant rumble carried the fear of an empire drawing closer. After the fall of Constantinople in 1453, all of Europe trembled. The once mighty Byzantine Empire had collapsed like ancient stone crumbling into dust, and with it, the last great barrier between the Christian world and the relentless power of the Ottoman Empire had vanished. Sultan Mehmed II, triumphant and ambitious, had no intention of stopping. He sought more cities, more borders, more glory, and above all, he sought to extend Ottoman rule deep into Europe. Belgrade was his next great prize. Belgrade stood on sacred ground, a crossroads of civilizations, a fortress that controlled the passage between East and West, and a gatekeeper to the Hungarian kingdom. Its towering walls guarded not only a city, but the safety of Europe itself. The Hungarians knew this, the Church knew this, the Ottoman Empire knew this, and the people of Belgrade felt it with every anxious breath. If Belgrade fell, nothing stood in the way of the Ottomans sweeping across the continent. Inside the fortress, the mood was tense. The garrison, brave but limited in number, prepared feverishly for the siege that would define their lives and possibly end them. They patched walls, sharpened weapons, and filled every tower and rampart with defenders. Yet even with all their effort, they knew their numbers were too small to face Mehmed's massive army alone. They needed a miracle, and Hungary was preparing to send one. Far from the fortress, a warrior priest named John Hunyadi, admired throughout Europe for his military brilliance, was raising an army of volunteers, peasants, veterans, and crusaders. Hunyadi had fought the Ottomans many times and knew their strength better than anyone else in Europe. He also understood that the fall of Belgrade would mean disaster for the entire continent. For him, this battle was not just about strategy or territory. It was about survival. Hunyadi's army was small, barely 7,000 men, yet their morale was fierce. They were driven by faith, desperation, and a cause larger than themselves. Many had volunteered simply because they feared what would happen to their villages and families if Belgrade fell. Others joined because they believed in Hunyadi's leadership and reputation as the one man capable of stopping the Ottoman tide. Whatever their reasons, they marched with determination toward the fortress. As the Hungarians approached the Danube, they could see smoke rising in the distance, faint plumes that hinted at devastation left behind by Ottoman scouts. Villages had already been cleared, farms burned, and fields trampled under the weight of tens of thousands of marching soldiers. The Ottomans were not hiding their presence. They wanted Europe to know what was coming. Sultan Mehmed II led an army estimated at 100,000 men janissaries, elite cavalry, artillery units, sappers, engineers, and foot soldiers from all corners of the empire. It was one of the largest forces the Ottomans had ever assembled for a European campaign. To those who saw it, the army looked like an endless river of men stretching across the earth. Its cannons, pulled by teams of oxen, left deep grooves in the ground, and its banners fluttered like dark wings over the marching troops. Belgrade's defenders watched from the ramparts as the horizon darkened with the silhouettes of the approaching army. The sight alone was enough to make the bravest soldier's heart tremble. The Ottomans moved with precision and purpose, establishing camps, constructing siege lines, and positioning massive cannons along the riverbanks. The ground seemed to shake under the weight of their preparations. The first thunder of cannon fire echoed across the Danube, shattering the early morning calm. Belgrade's stones trembled under the impact, and dust clouds billowed into the air. The Ottoman artillery was unlike anything most Europeans had ever seen. The cannons that had crushed Constantinople now targeted Belgrade's walls, and each explosion reminded the defenders of the empire's overwhelming strength. Yet despite the terrifying bombardment, the walls held, at least for now. Belgrade's fortifications had been strengthened over years, reinforced with stone, timber, and layers of earth that absorbed the shock of cannon fire. Still, the defenders knew that no wall could endure such artillery forever. Time was their enemy, and every hour counted. Inside the fortress, people huddled together in prayer. Churches filled with men, women, and children seeking strength and comfort. Priests walked through the streets, offering blessings to soldiers preparing to fight. The air was thick with smoke, fear, and faith. For many, Belgrade had become a final refuge, a place where they stood not just as soldiers or citizens, but as guardians of an entire civilization. As the siege intensified, the Ottomans launched repeated assaults on different sections of the wall, testing for weaknesses. Waves of infantry stormed forward under the cover of arrow fire and cannon blasts. The defenders fought back with arrows, stones, boiling water, and anything they could use as a weapon. Every inch of ground became a battleground. Every moment became a fight for survival. Meanwhile, Hunyadi's forces were not yet inside Belgrade. They waited on the opposite side of the Danube, preparing for a daring attempt to break through the Ottoman naval blockade. The Sultan had positioned warships along the river to prevent reinforcements from reaching the city. If Hunyadi could not break through, Belgrade would be left alone to face impossible odds. Hunyadi studied the Ottoman ships from the riverbank, his mind calculating every angle, every possibility. The Ottomans expected him to attack at night or attempt a stealthy crossing. But Hunyadi had something else in mind, a frontal naval assault using fire, speed, and desperation as weapons. He believed that sometimes the boldest strategy was the only one that worked. As the sun rose the next day, Hunyadi ordered his fleet of makeshift war barges, fishing boats, and river vessels to prepare for battle. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they carried men who refused to accept defeat. Torches were lit, barrels of flammable substances were loaded, and archers took their positions. It was a gamble that could save Belgrade or doom it. The Ottoman sailors, confident after months of controlling the river, watched the Hungarian boats begin their advance. At first, they laughed, believing the small fleet posed no threat. But their laughter faded when they saw the firepots, the blazing projectiles, and the fearless determination of the men rowing toward them at full speed. The river exploded into chaos. Flames spread across the water as fireboats smashed into Ottoman ships. Arrows whistled through the air. Men shouted, screamed, and fought desperately as wooden vessels crashed together. Amid the chaos, Hunyadi's forces broke the blockade, clearing a path to Belgrade. The defenders on the walls erupted in cheers as they saw the Hungarian fleet pushing through the flames. Supplies, reinforcements, weapons, and hope finally reached the fortress. For the first time since the siege began, the defenders felt a surge of confidence. Belgrade was no longer alone. The arrival of Hunyadi's forces marked a turning point, a moment when the defenders believed that victory, though distant, was still possible. Inside the city, the tired and hungry soldiers embraced their new comrades. They shared bread, water, weapons, and stories. Hunyadi's presence lifted their spirits more than any supply shipment could. He walked the ramparts, inspected the wounded, and encouraged the men to fight with renewed courage. His leadership was a beacon of strength. The Ottoman army watched this development with frustration. Mehmed II was furious that his blockade had failed. He realized that the siege would now be far more difficult than he had planned. What was meant to be a swift conquest was turning into a prolonged and costly struggle. The Sultan ordered his troops to intensify the bombardment and prepare for an all-out assault. Belgrade's walls shook under the relentless cannon fire. Massive sections of stone crumbled, leaving gaps that the defenders scrambled to repair with wooden beams, earth, and whatever materials they could gather. The air was thick with dust and smoke, making it difficult to see or breathe. The ground trembled again and again as artillery pounded the fortress. Night brought no relief. Flaming projectiles arched through the sky, leaving fiery trails before crashing into the city. Homes burned, towers cracked, and streets filled with debris. Yet the defenders refused to give up. They fought fires, tended to the wounded, and repaired walls in the darkness. Every citizen became part of the defense. Hunyadi knew the Ottomans would soon launch their largest assault. He prepared his men accordingly, organizing units, planning counterattacks, and positioning strategic traps. He understood that the battle would reach its decisive moment inside the walls. The time for the final test was rapidly approaching. As dawn broke, a massive roar echoed across the battlefield. Ottoman war drums thundered, horns sounded, and tens of thousands of soldiers surged toward the fortress. The ground shook beneath their charge. The defenders braced themselves, gripping their weapons tightly as they prepared to face the largest army assembled in Europe since the fall of Constantinople. The battle that followed became one of the most brutal confrontations in medieval history. Ottoman infantry stormed the breaches, climbing over rubble and bodies to reach the defenders. Janissaries advanced in disciplined ranks, their arrows and firearms causing devastating casualties. Yet the Hungarians stood their ground with astonishing courage. The clash turned the walls into rivers of blood. Neither side showed any sign of retreat. Every inch of Belgrade became a battlefield. The defenders pushed back wave after wave, using spears, swords, and sheer determination to keep the Ottomans from overwhelming them. Despite the ferocity of the assault, the defenders managed to repel the enemy again and again. Hunyadi's strategies and the unwavering courage of the Hungarians kept Belgrade from falling. But everyone knew that the final decisive moment had not yet come. The city was battered, broken, and exhausted. The Ottomans were preparing for another attack, one that would test the limits of human endurance. As the sun set behind the fortress, casting long shadows across the ruined walls, both armies prepared for the next phase of the siege. The defenders knew that the night would bring new dangers, but they refused to surrender. Against impossible odds, they still stood, and the fate of Christian Europe still hung in the balance. The stage was set for the most dramatic confrontation of the entire siege, a moment that would become legendary in the centuries to come. Belgrade had survived the initial storm. Now it had to survive the fire that was still to come. Night settled over Belgrade like a shroud, dark and heavy, carrying with it the weight of exhaustion and dread. Fires still burned across parts of the fortress, their glow illuminating the broken walls and the wounded soldiers lying in improvised shelters. The cries of the injured echoed through the narrow streets as priests and volunteers moved between them, offering water, comfort, and prayers. The city, though battered, had not fallen. But the night was far from peaceful, for both sides knew the conflict was entering its most desperate stage. Hunyadi walked along the ramparts, his face lit by torchlight and the smoldering remains of the Ottoman bombardment. The commander was weary, but unbroken. He understood the rhythm of sieges. After a massive assault, the enemy would regroup, reassess, and prepare something even more terrible. He also knew that the defenders could not withstand unlimited attacks. Every hour cost lives, strength, and hope. Yet he encouraged his men with soft words, steady glances, and unshakable resolve. Outside the walls, the Ottoman camp buzzed with activity. Sentries shouted orders as engineers prepared new siege towers and ladders. The wounded were dragged back into tents, while fresh troops rotated to the front lines. Mehmed II himself stood near his pavilion, studying the silhouette of Belgrade against the night sky. His pride had been wounded by the defenders' resilience, and his anger simmered beneath his calm exterior. Belgrade was supposed to fall quickly, Instead, it was turning into a nightmare. The Sultan's advisors cautioned him about the heavy casualties already suffered, but Mehmed was unmoved. To retreat would be to show weakness. To pause would embolden the Europeans. He had built his empire on momentum and terror. A failure at Belgrade would stain his legacy. So he ordered preparations for one final massive assault, an attack that would crush the defenders completely. Inside Belgrade, the defenders sensed this approaching storm. Food was scarce, water was rationed, and sleep was nearly impossible. The walls had begun to sag under the weight of repeated cannon strikes. Many soldiers had not removed their armor for days. Others wrapped cloth around their wounds and returned to the ramparts, unwilling to abandon their comrades. Despite their exhaustion, a fierce determination bound them together. As dawn approached, a thick mist rose from the Danube, cloaking the battlefield in a cold, damp haze. The defenders stood silently at their posts, gripping their weapons, peering into the fog. Somewhere beyond the mist, tens of thousands of Ottoman soldiers were gathering. The defenders knew that if the next attack succeeded, the city would be overrun in hours. Yet not a single soldier abandoned his post. The sun finally pierced the fog, revealing a terrifying sight. The Ottoman army stretched across the horizon in endless waves, janissaries in disciplined ranks, cavalry units waiting behind them, artillery crews adjusting their cannons for another devastating bombardment. The ground shook as drums thundered and horns signaled the beginning of the assault. The defenders braced themselves for the onslaught. The bombardment began with horrifying intensity. Cannonballs smashed into the walls with deafening explosions, sending stones flying and clouds of dust rising into the sky. Entire sections of the fortress shook under the barrage. The defenders shielded their faces as debris rained down around them. It felt as though the earth itself was breaking apart. When the cannons finally fell silent, a wave of infantry surged forward. Ottoman soldiers charged across the open ground, climbing over bodies, rubble, and broken equipment. They raised ladders against the walls, fired arrows upward, and pressed forward with relentless fury. The defenders fought back with everything they had: stones, spears, boiling water, burning pitch turning the walls into a scene of chaos. For hours, the battle raged without pause. At times, the Ottomans managed to gain a foothold on the walls, but the defenders pushed them back through sheer will. The ground became slick with blood, and the air thick with smoke and screams. The clash was so intense that the two armies seemed locked together in a desperate struggle between life and death. Yet, little by little, the Ottoman pressure began to break through. A massive breach opened along the lower walls, allowing enemy soldiers to pour into the outer courtyard. The defenders rushed to meet them, but their lines were stretched thin. The Ottomans pressed deeper, shouting victory cries as they advanced. The defenders felt the weight of the moment Belgrade was perilously close to falling. Seeing the danger, Hunyadi made a radical decision. Instead of retreating deeper into the fortress, he led a counterattack into the breach, surprising the Ottoman soldiers who thought the outer courtyard was already theirs. The defenders fought like men possessed, driving their enemies back with shocking intensity. Hunyadi's unexpected charge became a turning point in the battle. Still, the Ottomans were far from defeated. Mehmed ordered fresh troops into the fray, determined to overwhelm the defenders by sheer numbers. The battle became a desperate back-and-forth struggle, with control of the outer courtyard changing hands multiple times. Every time the Ottomans pushed forward, the Hungarians counterattacked. Every time the defenders weakened, reinforcements rushed in to fill the gaps. The fighting dragged into the afternoon. Smoke rose over the battlefield, obscuring the sun. The cries of the wounded blended with the clash of steel and the shouts of commanders. Hunyadi moved from one section of the wall to another, directing defenses, shouting orders, and inspiring those around him. His presence kept the defenders from breaking. Then something unexpected happened, something that would change the entire course of the siege. A group of crusader volunteers, emboldened by Hunyadi's example, launched an unsanctioned charge through a breach in the wall, rushing straight into the Ottoman lines outside the fortress. Their attack caught the Ottomans off guard and created temporary confusion among the ranks. The Ottomans hesitated, unsure if this was a full-scale counterattack. Seeing the confusion, Hunyadi seized the moment. He ordered the gates to open and led a massive countercharge, pouring out of the fortress in a flood of steel and fury. The defenders who had been fighting on the walls moments earlier now surged into the open field with a renewed sense of purpose. The sudden Hungarian attack threw the Ottoman army into disarray. Their formations broke, their lines buckled, and soldiers stumbled backward as the defenders pressed forward. Hunyadi's men used the chaos to their advantage, striking with ferocity and precision. The battle erupted across the Ottoman camp, which had been unprepared for a counterattack of such scale. Mehmed II, furious and shocked, tried to rally his troops. But the panic spread quickly. Fire broke out in parts of the Ottoman camp, ignited by fleeing torches and overturned siege equipment. Horses panicked, cannons toppled, and soldiers trampled over one another trying to retreat. The battlefield, once orderly and disciplined, descended into utter chaos. The defenders pushed deeper into the Ottoman camp, shouting victory cries as they destroyed siege weapons, burned supplies, and attacked pockets of resistance. The Janissaries attempted to regroup, but the momentum had shifted irreversibly. The Hungarian counterattack had struck at the heart of the Ottoman army, its morale. As evening approached, the Ottoman retreat turned to a rout. Thousands fled across the plains, abandoning weapons, banners, and equipment. The Sultan himself was injured in the chaos when a piece of shrapnel struck him. He ordered a full retreat, unable to risk the complete destruction of his army. Belgrade, against all odds, had survived. Inside the fortress, the defenders watched in disbelief as the Ottoman army withdrew. Exhausted and bloodied, they could barely comprehend what they had achieved. They had faced an enemy 15 times their size and endured weeks of bombardment and assault. Yet they had not only survived, they had won. The victory sent shockwaves across Europe. Word spread quickly of the miraculous triumph at Belgrade, and the defenders were hailed as heroes. Priests rang bells in celebration. Kings expressed awe, and common people rejoiced. Belgrade had become a symbol of resistance, courage, and divine favor. Hunyadi, however, did not celebrate. He knew the cost of victory. Thousands had died, the city was in ruins, and the threat of future Ottoman attacks remained. Though he had saved Europe from immediate conquest, the war between East and West was far from over. He walked among the wounded, offering comfort to those whose sacrifices had made the victory possible. In the days that followed, Belgrade struggled to recover. Bodies were buried, walls repaired, and fires extinguished. The survivors shared stories of courage, sacrifice, and miracles. Many believed that divine intervention had played a role in their victory. Others credited Hunyadi's brilliance, the bravery of the defenders, and the unity of people fighting for survival. Mehmed II returned to his empire, humiliated but determined. He vowed that the defeat at Belgrade would not define his reign. Yet the loss haunted him, reminding him that even the greatest armies could falter in the face of courage and desperation. He turned his focus elsewhere, but the memory of Belgrade lingered like a shadow over his ambitions. For Europe, the victory at Belgrade marked a turning point. It bought time-precious decades that allowed kingdoms to strengthen their armies, fortify their cities, and prepare for future conflicts. Without Belgrade's resistance, the map of Europe might have looked very different. The city had earned its place in history as the fortress that saved a continent. John Hunyadi would not live long to enjoy the legacy of his triumph. He fell ill shortly after the battle and died within weeks. His death was mourned across Europe, and he was remembered as one of the greatest defenders of Christian civilization. His leadership had been the deciding factor in one of history's most remarkable victories. The Siege of Belgrade became a legend. For centuries, stories of the 7,000 Hungarians who repelled 100,000 Ottomans inspired generations. Poets wrote about it, historians studied it, and nations honored it. It stood as a reminder that even the smallest forces, when united and determined, can achieve the impossible. Belgrade rebuilt its walls, strengthened its defenses, and remained a symbol of resilience. Its people, shaped by the trauma and glory of the siege, carried forward the memory of sacrifice. They had lived through hell and emerged victorious. The battle changed not just the fate of a city, but the trajectory of a continent. It preserved Europe at a time when it stood on the brink of collapse. And though centuries have passed, the echoes of that summer still reverberate through history, reminding us of the courage that saved a world.